to On the Trail. I'm your host, Miles James Dean. Traveling down the East Coast to Washington, D.C. was by far the more complicated and time-consuming part of the route across the United States. Traffic congestion and the inability to use the interstate highway that ran directly to Washington moved me onto Route 1. And although at times equally congested, was still a more direct route. There you see how congested Route 1 was at times. Often I had to move back onto the city streets with Joyce driving behind to keep the cars away from Sankofa and myself. On occasion, when riding through uncongested parts of the city, Joyce would move back onto the highway and scout to see if there was a grassy shoulder that will allow me to ride for a measurable distance. Let's say 6 miles or longer. And if she observed that the conditions were suitable, she would either use the cell phone or the walkie-talkie to inform me, and then we'd adjust our meetup time to correspond to my riding time. That is to say, if, for example, 10 miles was the goal to ride before resting, then she would meet me at the 10-mile marker in 1 hour if Sankofa was loping, or 2 hours if he was walking. Up until now, Sankofa had been ridden 90% of the miles covered, and my plan was to continue using him for the next several days to get through Baltimore and into Washington, D.C. Due to the route that I needed to travel, not only was there the issue of street and highway congestion, but of where to camp out each night. Camping facilities such as KOA campsites were non-existent along the route, so for the most part, we were limited to camping out in small parking lots, mall parking lots, truck stops, and local parks. So because of this, we depended primarily on the water tank and gas power generator to provide drinking water for the horses and electricity for the inside lighting needs during the evening hours. The fact that the trailer was connected to the truck all day provided the power source needed to keep the refrigerator cold during the day. Now, another issue was that those nighttime resting places prohibited the horses from staying the night outside of the trailer, and that added to the preparation time for the morning ride. In addition to the bales of hay, the several bags of grain, I also carried large plastic bags and several bags of wood shavings to put in each stall during the night that would absorb the horse's urine and maintain the freshness inside the stalls. However, it also added to the weight of the manure that I had to shovel each morning as part of my daily chores. If the horses had to stay in the trailer overnight, then the morning after began with taking the horses out of the trailer, allowing them to stretch their legs, then water them, feed them their grain while cleaning out the manure and old shavings, then replacing fresh shavings before having my breakfast and the morning briefing with my driver. The evening routine was similar to the morning, except for the only needing to clean one stall since Sankofa spent much of the day on the road. Now, the evening was also the time for route planning and making the necessary contacts in advance. So, you can imagine that after the pre-ride prep activities in the morning, the day's ride, and then the prep work in the evening, I was down and out when I finally hit the sack. Now, the only direct route that crossed into Maryland from where we were riding, I was riding and Joyce was driving, was to cross over the Susquehanna River. There you see that it was just two lanes and very narrow and impossible for me to ride across on Sankofa. So prior to crossing, I loaded Sankofa into the trailer and drove him across the bridge before unloading him. So after 4 days of riding from Lincoln University, I finally arrived at the stables in Metropolitan, D.C., where the Metropolitan, D.C. cowboy was waiting my arrival and graciously allowed us to camp and turn out the horses to rest before riding into Baltimore and then to Washington to meet the scholars whom I wanted to interview. I was escorted by a couple of cowboys onto the Morgan State campus, where I was greeted by Dr. Ray Winbush and students. There you see a couple of my escorts. They're having lunch. Dr. Ray Winbush, of course. He and I greeting. That's the Morgan State campus. So, Morgan State is another historically black university that was founded in 1867 as a Methodist Episcopal seminary to train young black men in the missionary. He and I had an interview about the historical significance of the Maryland criminal case against John Punch, or Punch, they may pronounce. The case was recognized as the first legal sanctioning of lifelong slavery in Maryland in the year 1640. Some historians also consider this to be one of the first legal distinctions between Europeans and Africans made in the colony, and a key milestone in the development of the institution of slavery in the United States. Here's a short clip of that interview.
Me as a psychologist, I can measure a black person's insanity by how far they are from who they are as an African person. I mean, and you can do that. And the further you are away, the crazier you are.
So the full interview with Dr. Winbush can be seen either on the Black Heritage Writers website or my YouTube channel. The next interview was held at the National Archives, the National Archives at College Park, Maryland. That interview was with Dr. Walter B. Hill, and Dr. Hill was a senior archivist and historian at the National Archives and a leading authority on the documentation of African Americans in the Federal Records Administration. And that administration is the nation's record keeper of documents and materials created in the course of business conducted by the United States federal government. And Dr. Hill was a specialist in African American history. He had joined the National Archives in 1978, and at the time I interviewed him, he had been there for 3 decades, writing and publishing a wide range of articles, guides, and other materials about African American history. There you see Dr. Hill and I at our first meeting, and there at our interview and our goodbye. I'm also going to play a short clip of that interview.
No, I think I think we've lost certain social values and ethos in our communities. And not knowing our history is a part of it. Respect for life and respect for others. Those kinds of values are kind of lost out in many of our communities. Especially respect for life. We're killing ourselves. We've joined American society in eating ourselves to death. I'll never criticize blacks for manifesting their individuality. Who doesn't want to be different? Nothing wrong with that. But understand your dependency on other blacks and institutions. Why do you think there's so many thousands of black organizations out there? Because we need each other. Yeah. That is the collective group consciousness that we have. And we do it for a variety of reasons. Protection, advancement, all that good stuff. Yeah. That's a part of the institutions we created for ourselves.
It was without question a privilege for me, and indeed my honor, to have met such a brilliant mind and human being who gave much of his life in the service of the African American community. Sadly, Dr. Hill passed away only 8 months after our interview. Again, the full interview with Dr. Hill can also be seen on my YouTube channel. My next interview was held at my alma mater, Howard University. And that interview was with Dr. E. Ethelbert Miller. The theme in Washington was entitled "What Africa Gave to the World." And one of its references was to the layout and design of the city of Washington that was based on concepts of city planning and temple orientation that were first developed in ancient Egypt. Unfortunately, that taped interview was interrupted and went sideways when we discovered that we both were students at the university in the same year, and we went off on a tangent about what it was like to be a student there in those years. So maybe one day I'll try to edit out our segue down memory lane and post that. The 3 interviews were completed, and the weekend had arrived, and the decision was made to stay the weekend and leave for West Virginia and Harper's Ferry on that Monday, the 22nd of October. That was when I made my first mistake on the journey. You see, the Maryland Cowboys were having a trail ride that weekend, and I was invited to attend. Up until now, Sankofa had more than pulled his own weight. In fact, he was the bread and butter of the operation, and I shouldn't have used him, but I did, and I paid for it later. So as I was packing up to prepare to leave from the Maryland Cowboys area to head out from Washington to West Virginia, I was approached by a Maryland cowboy by the name of Everard, who brought with him 10 bales of hay and gave them to me. His comment to me was, quote, "I would like you to have these bales of hay as my contribution to your journey. And I want you to know that the reason I'm giving them to you is because for the entire time that you've been here, you haven't asked anyone for anything." It was a very kind gesture from a very kind man. So on October the 22nd, I was able to access the Chesapeake and Ohio canal path, commonly known as the C&O towpath from M Street, I believe it was M Street in Washington, D.C. And from there, it went 60 miles up to where I would be crossing into Harper's Ferry. It ran along the towpath ran along the Potomac River, separating Maryland from Virginia. And of course, I rode on the Maryland side. The plan was to ride approximately 60 miles and then cross over into West Virginia. Joyce and I would rendezvous every 10 miles where we thought she would be able to access an area adjacent to the towpath park, and then we'd water the horses and change if I was going to change. I rode Sankofa for the first 10 miles or so before giving Blaze his opportunity to show me what he had. And here's some footage that was taken while I was riding on Blaze. Oh, this is the C&O Canal, just above Lock 26. Blaze agrees with me. This is just a scene as we walk up the C&O, heading toward Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. After an hour on the towpath, I began to realize that I wasn't going to reach my destination at the time Joyce and I were planning, because Blaze was walking so slowly. I mean, his trot was uncomfortable to sit or to even post on, and he didn't have a lope. Anything above a trot was at a gallop. So it was either walk or fly like a bat out of hell. And to be honest with you, at one point, he was walking so slowly that I got off and started walking in front of him just to see which one of us walked the fastest at a normal walking pace, and I'll be doggone if I wasn't walking faster. I must admit, it was frustrating that I could walk faster, but I didn't bring him along to walk him like he was on a leash. So I got back on him and walked with him. The fact of the matter is that I needed him to work and for Sankofa to rest. Between the two of them, I did manage to cover 30 miles that day. So it was on the second day that things went a little sideways. I started the day on Sankofa, and Joyce and I were supposed to meet around mile marker 40. But there was no access to the towpath because of a detour that sent her in another direction. And we were communicating using our walkie-talkies, and I think I kind of frustrated her, calling her so much. And I'll play you a little clip of some short communications that we had. As you come up that detour road, there is, you come up to the top of a hill, a little short hill, and 15 is off to your right, to your left, and 28 is off to your right. Do you get to that point yet? Over.
I'm on Mount Steel Road, and that was...
Okay, all right, say that again. You where?
Let me get right back with you. Okay, I'm on my way. I'm not that far from you.
How do you know that? Over.
Because I stopped to ask some construction workers. I got a persistent teacher over and out.
So in time, we did meet up, and I changed horses and began the final 20 miles to crossing where I would enter Harper's Ferry. On the way to the crossing, not only did my phone battery lose its charge, but so did my walkie-talkie. And upon arriving at the crossing, I found that to cross over the C&O required climbing some stairs. There, you see the stairs, and they were, whew. There's the bridge that I was going to walk on, and here you see the path that's on top of the bridge that I was supposed to walk on, and now you see what it looked like from Joyce's side of the river. So this was not going to happen, at least not on Blaze. And without any way to communicate to Joyce the predicament that I was in, and the fact that it was approaching dusk, which made the predicament even worse, the only thing left for me to do was to ride back in the direction I had come, looking for a place near the water where I could bed down for the night. I didn't think I didn't think I was going to meet up with Joyce. And then how was I going to hold on to Blaze was another mind-boggling picture that came into my mind. I mean, it was straight out of the movie Garden of Evil with Gary Cooper. Me lying on top of my horse blanket covering the ground, resting my head on my saddle. I mean, this just wasn't a comfortable image. And then there was the issue of just how far away could I picket Blaze for the night so he wouldn't step on me, as if I was going to be able to sleep. But it was not at all a comfortable feeling. So I rode about 3 miles back to where a marker indicated that a short distance ahead was an access road leading on to the towpath, and decided that it would be a good place. As good a place as any for me to stop and rest for the night, and then try to meet up with Joyce, the next day. The sun had just gone down when I got there, and by golly, by gum, by Billy Joe B. Bob, Joyce was there waiting for me. Now, often during the journey, Joyce had to make driving adjustments and reroute herself, to meet me at a rendezvous spot that was different from the pre-planned destination. So it wasn't a shock to see her, but what a comfort it was. And I didn't expect it again. What she told me was that she drove across the Potomac River to Harper's Ferry, saw the bridge, knew that I was going to climb it with Blaze, and then decided to come back over and just take a shot at, where she might be able to find me. I said it before, and I'll say it again. And when I said that the ancestors were in on the journey, that didn't mean that I would be the only one touched by them. So, on the next episode, we will ride into West Virginia and into the Blue Ridge Mountains section of the extensive Appalachian Mountain Range, where it was impossible to climb and where the forces of nature prevailed. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, stay tuned, pay close attention. Happy trails to you. Until we meet again.